When I talk about emotional eating, the things that I help my patients with, food can be very emotional for other reasons too, right? So certain traditions, food is a way for people to come together. Food can be emotional, and it's not the idea that food is emotional that is the issue for a lot of people. What becomes an issue for a lot of people is when we use food as our only mechanism to soothe or to cope with overwhelming emotions. A lot of the things that would help people to be able to lose weight are at the crux of the things that we would encourage people to do for general good health. Eating well, sleeping well, managing your stress better, moving more. All of these things we know can contribute to helping with weight loss, but they're also things that everybody should be doing anyway. So these are just principles of like good health in general.
How are we starting these? I don't even remember.
I don't think we really had a way to start it, but I mean, I don't know, dude. It's been a minute.
Yeah,
it's been
it
a
has.
minute since we've both been in here.
Yeah,
How have you been?
Good.
What's been going on?
Yeah,
man?
yeah. You know, just hanging out in this chair a lot. You know.
Yeah, you've just been sitting here for the last 2 weeks, just waiting for the next video.
It's been a while.
So yeah, this episode was. I mean, I don't know. It was one of my favorites.
Mind blowing?
Yeah, it was mind blowing. Yeah. It was very informative.
Yeah.
I think anytime that we can bring the mental and emotional aspect into fitness and weight loss, I am like very, very curious.
Yeah, and I think that is the roadblock for a lot of people, the emotional side of this. Dr.Al-barwani brought a ton of information, some stuff that I knew, and then some new things and techniques as well to kind of deal with this. She uses NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming, which I've heard of, but far from an expert in. Definitely some of the things that she was talking about, I recognize in everyday life, and then she just kind of brings the science background and relates it to medical and directly to weight loss, which is super interesting. I also liked how, you know, at the end of the episode, we talk about the weight loss drugs of the world. And she didn't really have anything negative, right? She's very supportive of weight loss drugs as a doctor. So by no means was there any negativity. I thought that maybe that might be the case with someone that is really into something like NLP. They might be anti.
The more holistic
side. Holistic. Thank you. Yeah, more holistic. But she comes from a very neutral perspective of the reality, right? And so I really enjoyed that approach.
Yeah, I agree too. Because I think to be a professional, I think knowing and understanding that the physical, the holistic side has its place just as much as this works for other people too, and it just depends on who you're dealing with rather than just like one hammer to fix everything.
Right, which is the skill of a doctor, the skill of a professional, right, can help you determine that. So yeah, really good information. Sean, make sure that you put in all of her information and everything, so if people want to check it out, go to the website. Abadiah Wellness is her website, so abadiahwellness.com. So Sean will put that in here, so if anyone's interested in Dr. Al-barwani's services, she has a course as well specifically about emotional eating and using NLP to overcome that.
And she can help you completely remote. I think she was
saying and
too,
she works
like anywhere.
She works completely remote, so she can only prescribe the weight loss drugs to people here in Texas, in the state of Texas. But as far as the coaching and NLP stuff, it'd be remote, so anywhere in the world she can help you out.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Well, enjoy this episode. Lots of great information, and yeah, hope you love it. All right, so before we get into talking about food and how people eat, because people can be very sensitive about these things, right?
Absolutely.
Can we discuss a little bit about your background, your credentials, and why you are qualified to talk about some of these topics we're going to be covering today?
Absolutely. Thank you. So my background is in medicine, obviously. I'm a doctor, and so I have been a family medicine doctor. That was kind of my first specialty within medicine, and have been doing that for the past 15 years. And love it. Love primary care. Love everything about it. I love like just the unexpectedness of it sometimes, just not knowing what's going to walk in the door and being able to kind of help everybody at different levels. But what I found is that I was having the same conversations regarding chronic diseases as far as like lifestyle and stress management and eating. And a lot of it was related to weight and how their weight was affecting their chronic conditions, and how making changes at the levels that I just mentioned can really have an impact on not just their weight, but also their chronic diseases. And so in primary care, one of the mainstays is treating and addressing chronic disease. So I had a number of patients who really needed help with weight loss. And so part of what we do is kind of motivate them and move them towards wanting to make that change. But I realized that when patients were coming to me and they're like, I'm ready to lose the weight, I was at a loss as far as how to actually guide them, right? Like I would give them information based off of my personal experience. For example, I'd be like, oh, eat multiple meals a day and do this and do that. But this was just based on the fact that I loved like nutrition and loved like being active, et cetera. There was not a lot of information that I was given. And I went to a really good medical school and had a really good residency training. I still didn't have the tools that I needed to truly help my patients when they were ready to start losing weight. Contrast this with like somebody who wants to quit smoking. In medical school, we know exactly like what medications to take, how to convert how many cigarettes they're smoking a day to like milligrams of nicotine that we would put them on for like a patch, for example. So there's like a very detailed information on how to do that. But with weight loss, it was just exercise and diet, right? It was very generic. It was a very small paragraph in my text to like really guide our patients. And I felt like this was a huge disservice for my patients. So this is kind of what launched me to pursue a career in obesity medicine. So I went back to the drawing board and I went to complete my certification in obesity medicine and have been practicing and then started my own practice because I realized that this is what I really want to do for my patients. And I felt like I wasn't going to be able to do this working for other people, right? A lot of times we're driven by other measures when we have employers. So, numbers, insurance, et cetera. And so I decided I wanted to start my own practice in obesity medicine. And so in so doing, I've gained that experience. And as I've worked in the field of obesity medicine now for several years, I noticed that there was another gap. And that gap is kind of the gap between patients knowing what they need to be doing. And I noticed the similar gap in primary care, knowing what they need to do and actually doing it. So education to execution, right? And so couldn't figure out what that was until I experienced that for myself. And so unrelated to healthcare, went through my own transformation and understanding my mindset and shifting my mindset. And side note, this was around my business and like my mindset around money, but shifted a lot of the things that I was raised to believe about money and my capabilities of making money through my own experience. And when I had that coaching, and it was NLP that I was first introduced to, that kind of that helped me to have that shift personally, like it felt like everything clicked into place. It felt like this is exactly what I need to be doing and practicing with my own patients to help them to have these same shifts about their health and their wellness. And so that undertook another journey for me to become an NLP coach or NLP practitioner. And so, yes, for those reasons, I am credentialed in all of the above.
Yeah. It's so funny that you compare the money part, because I often tell people when I'm having consultations with clients as well, a lot of things that I'll say is, as I'm kind of teaching them about, everyone knows what to do, right? That's like telling an overweight person to exercise more and eat less. Well, duh. Like, yeah. I'm not actually helping anyone by telling you that because you already know. Exactly. But what I was getting at is, I tell people oftentimes my wheelhouse is like fitness and finance, health and wealth.
Yeah.
Those are things that there are so many correlations between the two. And we don't have to get into that today, but I find it interesting that you kind of noticed that as well.
Absolutely.
And I can often have the same type of conversation. And obviously, I'm not talking to my personal training clients about money, right? But as I'm maybe talking to Denver about money situations between us, a lot of the same conversation techniques can be used when you're guiding the conversation, helping them understand how to actually get something done.
100%.
It's so interesting. And I really like, too, that your background is actually in primary care. I didn't know that. And then you transitioned over into this thing, because it's so important to understand, in my opinion at least, and I could be wrong about this. I often think that if people could lose weight, then a lot of their health conditions would come along with it. Now, what's going on within the body, like obviously that's not my wheelhouse, that's more of yours, but I like that you said that the weight loss will also contribute to their chronic conditions going down. Can you speak just maybe a couple minutes on why that is and how they affect each other?
Absolutely. And so a lot of times, nowadays it's becoming less so, but I think that a lot of the times, or in the past, we associated obesity with more of an aesthetic thing as opposed to a true medical condition. And so, it's one of the newer conditions to be acknowledged as actually a medical condition. So for the longest time, it wasn't. And so I think it was in the 1990s maybe that AMA finally acknowledged that it's a medical condition that does need to be treated and managed like other medical conditions. And so to me, that's crazy that it's so recent as that. But that being said, I do agree that it is a lot of the things that would help people to be able to lose weight are at the crux of the things that we would encourage people to do for general good health, right? So eating well, sleeping well, managing your stress better, moving more, all of these things we know can contribute to helping with weight loss, but they're also things that everybody should be doing anyway. So these are just principles of good health in general. And then there's the added and then obviously there are added complexities that somebody who has obesity struggles with that needs to be addressed on top of these basic lifestyle things that I just mentioned. Obesity, it's very far reaching. It's been linked to many different kinds of cancers. It's linked to joint pain, back pain. It's associated with mental disorders like depression and anxiety. So there's a big impact that obesity has on other things. And for a lot of conditions, I think it's a chicken or egg kind of situation because you kind of don't know, did the obesity cause this, or is depression, for example, right? People who have obesity and depression, obesity, just the fact that people are unhappy with how they look and the impact of that on their health can cause depression. But similarly, depression can cause you to have habits that would lead to obesity. So there's a complex interplay a lot of the times with many of these medical conditions with obesity. And so I think, again, getting to the root of these things with addressing basics and then managing the obesity with medications and other things that we have available to us these days becomes really important.
Yeah. And, that link, which one came first? Is it even important, or do we just need to understand that they are fueling each other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't focus on which one came first. I agree. I think that it's just important to understand that there is this complex interplay and addressing both for the patient or the client in order to help them to get better, right? Because that's at the end of the day what we want.
Yeah, and I can speak from personal experience here. As a teenager, I was overweight and had depression. I was diagnosed depression, anxiety, ADHD, and PTSD as a teenager. And I lost about 85 pounds over about a year period, to about 8 months. Actually lost weight fairly quickly. But it was less than a year to lose about 85 pounds. And it all went away.
Yeah.
Which one came first? I'm unsure. A lot of that, my teenage years are kind of cloudy for me, but I know that when I ate better, I felt better. And when I lost weight, I felt better. And then I started exercising and working out, I felt better. And
yeah,
like that, it was all gone. And that's a big reason that I do what I do now. But anyways.
That's very inspiring. Sorry, I have to say that.
Thank you.
Really
yeah. I mean, that is why we're here right now.
Exactly.
I believe that, your specialty is weight loss. You could consider mine the fitness piece of the weight loss equation, right? And that is why we are here right now, because I know how it can impact everyone and anyone that's listening to this. If they can manage these things that we're going to be talking about today and commit and build motivation, discipline, and all those things that come along with these things, they can be successful also. And that's all we're trying to do right now.
Exactly.
Is help people be successful with
100%.
this. You mentioned NLP earlier. Let's talk, can you define NLP for me real quick? And then I'd like to maybe transition our conversation into this emotional eating situation. But you already said NLP. I'm sure people maybe are curious what that is, what it means, and then we can go into the eating part of this.
Absolutely. So NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And the way I understand it is it's looking at how the brain processes information and how that drives behavior. So it's really just what we're taking in and how that causes us to behave the way that we behave. And so by understanding that, and the other way that I talk about it is like, it's the language of the mind. By understanding that, we're able to drive behavior. And so we use that, or this is used from anywhere from like psychology all the way to like marketing, right? So it's like just understanding what drives people's behavior in order to impact it. The beauty of NLP and why I love it so much is that if you're familiar with the conscious and the subconscious mind, the subconscious mind, as we know, drives like 95% of our automatic behaviors. So it's the part of us that if I were to ask you to choose a number between 1 and 10, you would say
7.
Did you have to think about that?
No.
It just kind of came right out of you. So it's like that automatic processing that's happening in the background at all levels that's driving like, what side of how you comb your hair, or which hand you use to brush your teeth. You don't have to think about how you tie your shoes. It's just the part of you that kind of moves automatically. The beauty of NLP is that because this part of you is driving 95% of your actions, if we can address that, then we're automatically causing behavior, right? We're automatically impacting behavior. And so that's the beauty of NLP. It doesn't try to change things on a level that you have to kind of think about things where there's some effort. We're trying to make a lot of the change happen on a level where there's no effort required so that your goal is achieved much more easily.
How much effort does it take to change this though?
Yeah, so the beauty of NLP is that because we're speaking to the subconscious, it really depends from person to person. And so the techniques that we use are addressing the subconscious. So there are techniques that require us to kind of navigate, negotiate with the conscious mind. So there's a little bit of the coaching where we're talking about reframing, for example. So you have a perspective about something about your health. Let's say that you just feel like you're just a failure and you're just not going to be able to lose this weight, for example. And so there's a little bit of reframing where I'm helping you to see things from a different perspective. For example, there's a little bit of that happening. But at the crux of the techniques that we use in NLP, such as hypnosis, we're going right to your subconscious. So there's a way that I can kind of lead you to a place where you let go of that like conscious hold and your subconscious is completely open for me to put in or reprogram things that are beneficial to you, for you to believe, right? Things about yourself and your capabilities. And so through this process over time, it seeps into your subconscious much more easily, and then it does become automatic as to your identity, and then that drives your behavior.
You hooked me with hypnosis.
Can you hypnotize Phil?
Not today, but I'd be happy to.
That sounds great. I'd love to try that. Can you talk to what does that look like? What exactly does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think with hypnosis, it does get a little bit of bad rep because of like a lot of movies and Hollywood and things like that, where people think that they're going to be forced to do things that they don't want to do.
Sure.
And so hypnosis at its core, what it is, it's just a super relaxed state of awareness. So you are super relaxed, but you're very much aware. And when you're in that state, you're in a very much open state of your subconscious is very much open because you're at a brainwave level where you're receptive to suggestions. Now, when you're in this state, and the way that we lead you into this state is through different ways. So there's breathing that I do with patients leading into the hypnosis. There are suggestions. So there's like a kind of language that I use to help to induce you into a hypnosis state. And then when you're in the hypnosis state, again, I'm continuing to use language that helps you to feel even more relaxed. So you're aware and you're able to hear and you can even respond to me. However, you're in this space where you're just super relaxed. And so I can feed into your subconscious whatever it is you ask me to. I often record this for people just so that they know I'm not like, giving all your money or, whatever. They can understand it. And oftentimes,
I feel like Sean would do that.
And oftentimes what I tell people, and this is true about hypnosis, is that because it's you at the end of the day, I can never feed into your subconscious something that you wouldn't naturally do. So people who are like quacking like ducks on stage, that's because they are open to doing that. Anybody who is maybe shy or wouldn't naturally do that, you couldn't convince them even through hypnosis. So
Okay.
hypnosis really just opens you up to allow you to do the things that you innately want to be able to do.
But you just have a barrier to them.
Exactly.
Because
And that's
of your conscious mind.
There you go.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is there any instrument that you use? Like, I mean, of course, we're talking about movies, so I'm thinking, like,
Exactly.
look at the coin. You know, like-
Absolutely. I think those can be used as aids to help you to focus on something, but I don't use that at all. I just have you close your eyes and really focus on what I'm saying. And I use imagery. So a lot of the hypnosis induction I use is using imagery. So you imagining yourself in a place, and that is what you're focusing on. And that leads you into that state of like a deeper rest.
Yeah, I really like how you said it opens you to be more suggestive. Is that the word that you used?
Open to suggestion.
Open to suggestion.
Exactly.
Yeah, because the way people feel on a certain period of time, their reaction to the advice that you give them will be completely different.
Exactly.
And now that you say that, I'm thinking about when I'm talking to someone about their eating, the way that, and I would consider myself a fair communicator with people. And I think that's why we've been successful with what we've done and everything. So I know that when I'm talking to someone, when I'm about to drop something on them that I know that they kind of don't want to hear as far as their nutrition is concerned, tone change.
Yeah.
Everything kind of changes.
Body
I'll make sure
language
body
change,
language,
probably.
everything, you know, and then I make sure that they're in the state of mind to be ready for something.
Exactly.
And it's just so interesting. I never really thought about it, but that does happen.
And I'll add to that, and that's a great point. And then I'll add to that, and sometimes with, not sometimes with advertising, they use this a lot. So another technique of hypnosis is like changing like colors and changing lights and changing scenes and starting a story and then stopping it. And so sometimes we'll watch an ad and be like, I suddenly want a burger or I suddenly want a pizza, right? And it's that kind of like imagery, like changing shots and showing close-ups and then zooming out and changing all of these like kind of stimulating you in a certain way that kind of, again, opens you up to suggestion. And so then they're like, you want a pizza, you want a pizza, you know? And so then by the end of the commercial, you're like, I really want a pizza.
Yeah.
So that's almost like a version of hypnosis.
It absolutely is. And they use this language in marketing as well.
And it really does work to shift your mindset over time about things. And, you know, Sean mentioned the use of a third party tool. And I remember back when I was a teenager, I did some therapy and he never used the word hypnosis or anything like that. I think that the therapist that I saw, he called it like metronome therapy. I don't know if you ever heard of this,
I have.
but, and I'll just, I wasn't planning on going here with this, but my mom died when I was a teenager, very young, and I witnessed it. And so, you know, obviously I was 15 years old, very traumatized. Now I'm completely fine. I can talk about it all day because of this therapy that I did. And the therapy that we did was called metronome therapy. And he would introduce sounds. It was, and we would do that for a few minutes. And he would just speak in very relaxing terms, get super relaxed. And then we would talk about the incident in super deep detail.
I think that that's exactly what he was doing.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I never, thought about it in that way, but that's what it was. We would discuss it in super deep detail. And eventually it didn't matter. It didn't bother me anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, this can be applied to so many different things. And for people that are overweight, I'm sure you can attest to this. For people that are overweight, eating is a very emotional experience, just like what I went through was a very emotional experience.
Absolutely.
Can you speak to why food is so emotional and how we get wrapped up maybe in these not so great unconscious patterns?
Yeah, that's a great question. And thank you for sharing, by the way.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So yeah, absolutely. Eating can be very emotional for many people. And it stems a lot from kind of like, there's so many things, there's so many reasons. And so a lot of it for my patients, what I've noticed is it stems from something that happened in early childhood that associated eating with a specific emotion. So for example, I have a patient who she indulged in a lot of emotional eating, and I'll get into what I mean when I say that. And so in our therapy together, we uncovered that the reason she was doing that is that she, as a child, she lived in a boarding school. And so her comfort, the thing that reminded her most of home, was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. and she was in a British boarding school, and peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I think, is a very American thing.
Yeah.
And that kind of reminded her of home. And so she, as she grew older, subconsciously would reach for that. And she never really put the two together, but that was like her comfort food. And so it wasn't until we worked together that she was like, I didn't even remember that memory until we started working together. And I realized that that's why, like, it was just this like feeling of like wanting to belong that helped, that she was now taking into her adulthood, that she kind of went back to whenever she was in a place where she needed that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I talk about emotional eating, the things that I help my patients with, food can be very emotional for other reasons too, right? So familial, like something that is a traditional, for example. So certain traditions, food is a way for people to come together, and so or a way to show love, etc. And so food can be emotional, and it's not the idea that food is emotional that is the issue for a lot of people. What becomes an issue for a lot of people is when we use food as our only mechanism to soothe or to cope with overwhelming emotions. And so day to day, we're going to have a range of emotions depending on what we're going through, right? So we can have, happiness, sadness, guilt, stress, etc. However, when we are in those states of like difficult emotions that we're working through, when reaching for food in order to feel better is the only way that we can feel better, that's when it becomes an issue for so many people.
And do you have, like, what percentage of your client base or patient base is it where they're just like filling a void like that? Is that a large amount of people?
So filling a void, the void is almost always emotional, right? So it's never just, even boredom. When people say that they eat because they're bored, to me, when I work with patients and we kind of dig a little bit deeper, there's dissatisfaction at its root. There's an unhappiness at its root. And so when people say a void, yes, it is a void, but it's an emotional void. And so when we eat, the sugar, fat, and salt in food gives us this temporary relief from whatever emotions we're experiencing. So we feel good in the moment. But as many of us know who have indulged, and I'm not saying that anyone who does this has emotional eating. It's, again, when it becomes your only way to soothe. I've indulged in emotional eating here and there, but it's not my only way to soothe, right? I have other coping mechanisms. There's exercise, there's sleeping, there's reading a book, talking to a friend, etc. But for people who do struggle with emotional eating, they will recognize that it's their mainstay. That is the main thing that they reach for, because they cannot, they're not able to really say the things that they want to say to the people that they need to say them to, for example. And so that can result into frustration, and then they just reach for food instead of actually addressing the problem, for example.
Yeah, and it kind of sheds a little bit of light and positivity when you say that it's only a problem when it's your only way, right? So at what point does someone realize that? Or is it usually like physically their obesity maybe has gotten to the point where, all right, obviously something is wrong. But is there a way to maybe catch it before that happens?
I think that people who struggle with this often know and can recognize it within themselves, because there's this like guilt shame cycle oftentimes that also happens. So and obesity, to answer the question more directly about whether it's related to obesity, there are people who eat emotionally or are emotional eaters and they don't have obesity. So not necessarily always the case, but they do recognize that. And I don't want to get into all of the biology behind that, but they do recognize that this cycle of like unhealthy eating, and sometimes it can be a little bit of binge eating even. And then there's this like cycle of like feeling guilty because they've indulged so much in something, and then there's some shame, and then it just repeats itself over and over. So it's more that cycle that I think that if you identify, because if I'm having a sad day or a bad day and I have comfort, something that I really enjoy, I'm not going to feel bad because I'm like, I felt bad. I had, whatever, something that I don't typically have, and I feel better now, and I can go on with my day. But people who have emotional eating, there's often this overwhelming guilt and shame around their eating behavior. So in a way, they kind of recognize that it's behavior that they don't necessarily, they're not proud of, or maybe they're ashamed of. They can recognize that in themselves. And usually my patients who struggle with obesity, almost all of them do have an element of that emotional eating.
Mm-hmm. I feel like when it comes to emotional eating, a lot of people feel like they have these triggers, right? Can we discuss some popular specific triggers and maybe some techniques that can be used, or some NLP that we can start to work on to overcome some of these specific things?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with regards to triggers, it's going to be different for different people. For some people, it's situational. Some people, it's the environment they're in. It could be the people that are around them. So, for example, if you're at work and everybody's having pizza, that can be a trigger for people. If there's regularly free food, so for some people, it's travel. For other people, it's stress, sadness, loneliness. But again, at the core of a lot of these things, so people can recognize either an environment or a situation where they have emotional eating, and they can recognize that more as a superficial trigger is what I like to say. But at its core, I'm going to really stress that whoever does struggle with this, that they really kind of do some reflection as to what is the core emotion that they're feeling in that instance. Because at its core, it truly is an emotion or a belief that you have that needs to be released. And so again, going back to kind of the core and common emotions that people will experience will be sadness, anger, guilt, shame. And so even in that context where I said that's a social situation, for some people, for example, it could be this feeling of belonging. Why do you have a feeling of belonging, right? Like what is actually like that underlying emotion? And so, again, digging deeper as to like why people are doing that and getting down to what the root emotion is going to be the first step. Mm-hmm. From there, if you wanted to do work on your own, it would be journaling, right? So kind of exploring with yourself, what are the things that are leading to that emotion? So if it's shame, what are some of the things that you believe about yourself, about the world around you that is causing you to have this shame? And another powerful, so this can be really good as kind of like a brain dump, kind of getting things out. And then the other part of this that I love that's more empowering is what would you love to feel instead? So what are some emotions that you would rather feel in those instances, right? And then thinking about once you kind of get that out, because that can be really challenging for people to understand, to kind of realize, right, after reflection. But once they're able to kind of realize, okay, I would rather feel empowered. I would rather feel loved. I would rather feel valued, for example. Like, what are some things that you can do for yourself to make you feel that way? Because oftentimes we're looking externally for these things, and that's what we're doing when we reach for food. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with talking to a friend or doing things that involve the external, but you want to do that internal work primarily. And that needs to be, again, the root and the base of whatever you do. So how are some of the ways that you can feed that to yourself, right? If it's value, maybe you need to think about some boundaries that you need to set for in situations that you don't feel valued, right? If it's loved, what are some ways that you can show yourself love? So really starting to think again and reflect about how you can give whatever it is you're looking for to yourself, and then other ways that you can get them from other people, right? So those are just to start. Sorry, before I'll go on forever.
Please.
But those are the things.
I have a couple of questions though, and correct me if I'm wrong. But something I'll often tell people is they need to make sure that they address these things when they're not in the moment of the thing. So, for example, say one of your problems is, my friends, they just call me all the time to go out to eat, and I just can't say no. Well, don't try to say no in that moment. You need to do it outside of that moment, right?
So that's a great point. I think that the reflection piece and the work that I just described, obviously, it's difficult to happen in the moment, but it's important in the moment to be aware of what's going on internally. So whether in the moment or later reflecting on that moment, but paying attention to kind of, what did I hear? What did I understand? And how did I react? And those kinds of things, kind of replaying it just without judgment, just to gather facts. Like, it's kind of like a fact gathering hunt, like just figuring out like, what are the pieces that led to this behavior that I want to stop, right? And then once you do kind of the work that I just described earlier in terms of like finding out what you need to do for yourself in order to give to yourself, and then understanding and planning for the future. So let's say I know that whenever my girlfriends call me to go out for drinks, I can't say no. So once you do a little bit of reflection to understand why that's the case, what are some ways, and you know that this is a behavior you want to stop because it leads to whatever it is, right, that you want to stop. What are some ways ahead of time that you can kind of nip that in the bud. So whether that's you have an honest conversation with your girlfriends and you kind of say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. I would love to hang out, but can we hang out, X, Y, and Z these times of the day? Let's go to the park. Let's do something else. And so understanding what it looks like for you to be prepared or to avoid that situation in the future, right? And so for some people, when it comes to going back to like emotional eating example, I'll say to them, is there a way that you could have prepared better for this trigger? So let's say that they had a really stressful day and they skipped lunch and they skipped, breakfast. And then now it's the end of the day, they're feeling stressed. They're stopping at the, gas station and they're buying all the stuff that they wouldn't normally eat. Could you have prepared better throughout your day? Could you have maybe taken a protein shake with you to work? Could you have maybe meal prepped? So getting really kind of also like technical about some things that can prevent things that we recognize ahead of time as triggers for us can also be really helpful.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the journal. I keep a journal myself. Honestly, at this point in my life, it's kind of turned more into like a to-do list type of thing. But I agree that the brain dumping of the things that need to be done is so helpful.
It is.
And especially when it's not in the moment, because you can then look at that thing when the moment arises as a reminder of what you told yourself before whatever emotions or whatever dopamine and stuff starts to hit you when you do get that phone call or you smell that smell,
Absolutely. And so all of those things can definitely set you up for success because you've done that reflection, right? Because it's easy, as you said, to get carried away in the moment. Another really good time to do a brain dump is at the end of the day, right? Like, so for a lot of people who struggle with sleep, that's something I often recommend, is because we've got all these ideas swirling around in our head and our subconscious is like, well, this is really important. I can't let go of this. I can't let go of that idea. I can't let go of that idea. And so really, for people who do struggle where they have that overthinking that happens at night is before you go to bed, just like write every thought that comes to mind. Just write it all down. And oftentimes when people do that, they sleep much more restfully.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you earlier, but you kind of already answered it when you talked about you write it down and then it gives you the ability to reflect. My question was going to be, and so if you have anything else on this, please mention it. Is it the act of getting it out, or is it what you can do now that you have it out?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Because the act of having it out oftentimes tells your subconscious. So the reason, like I said, ideas are like kind of swirling around your head is that your subconscious is reminding you this is important. So by writing it out, you're like affirming. You're like, yes, I recognize that this is important. I'm writing it out. And then by the act of writing it out, and because especially, people want to use something digital, and there's nothing, I'm not against like technology, but it's the act of writing it out and the slow process of writing it out that allows you to kind of reflect on what you're writing and allows you to, I think, process the information in a better way. And so I love like just old fashioned pen and paper.
Yeah, I was about to say, call me old school, but there is something about writing it, like, and then moving your. Now I'm getting like kind of. I call this the hippie stuff. Okay, this is the hippie stuff. But like moving your hand in a different way to write different things versus when you're typing, you're pressing. It's the same action. There's
feels a little bit more disconnected.
Yeah, you feel disconnected from what you're actually trying to say.
I can definitely see that. And I do agree. I do think that the old-fashioned way, if that's what we're calling it now in 2024,
I guess,
is better for sure. Yeah.
I like it much better. Can we talk? You talked a little bit about the sleeping thing. Another specific issue that may or may not deal with emotional eating that I know a lot of people probably struggle with, the night eating. Right. So what leads to that and how can we start to overcome it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that that's going to be a little bit more nuanced for sure, because for different people, it could be that it could be the same reasons that lead to emotional eating. So it could be boredom, it could be frustration, it could be sadness. Because oftentimes at the end of the day, at night is when we kind of allow ourselves to be, right? Like there's not a million things pulling for our attention and we can kind of finally like hear ourselves sometimes. And for a lot of people, that's scary. They're not used to being by themselves or reflecting or hearing their own thoughts. They're always being bombarded, kids or pets or whatever, work, et cetera. They're being pulled in different directions. And so oftentimes at night is when we truly can be exposed and we are with ourselves. And for some people, that's a very uncomfortable thing. And so a lot of these emotions that trigger emotional eating can come to the surface at night. So that could be one cause. Another kind of common cause is night binging. And so there's a condition, a medical condition. And so if you do have this, definitely, seek help. And oftentimes it'll be secret eating, but part of it is nighttime eating. So this kind of binging that happens at night in secret. And so so that can be another reason that people kind of do this. And so if this is something you struggle with, where you're hiding these eating episodes and you're binging at a time to the point where you're super full, seek medical help, because that is an eating disorder.
I didn't know that was an actual disease. Or, where do you draw that line? How do you know someone is actually suffering medically from this versus just having a bad habit?
So there's a questionnaire that we would ask, right? So when I see my patients, I'm always screening for any eating disorder. So I have a number of questions that I go through. But one of the biggest red flags in that is exactly as I said. So it's secret eating. So it's like you're hiding that from other people, because there's a big element of shame that surrounds this behavior. The other is binging. So it's different from just kind of like, I ate a couple of slices of pizza because I was having a bad day. I ate a whole box of pizza and a tub of ice cream. It's eating to the point where you're just uncomfortable. And then speed is the other thing. So eating it really like a large amount of food in a short amount of time. That's kind of the other kind of red flag that you want to look out for.
And will this person, like, obviously if they're coming to you, then maybe they know they have an issue and they'll be honest with you. But I'm assuming this person would lie to their friends and family about their eating often.
Oftentimes, yes. Oftentimes, the patients that I've seen that I've diagnosed, they are not forthcoming with their family. And so they'll eat in their car, they'll eat when everyone's gone to sleep, things like that. They'll hide in their room and kind of do this behavior. So, yes.
How do these things start?
Oh, gosh. Phil, how much time do you have?
Plenty.
A lot of it is rooted again in childhood. A lot of it is, and it's not to say, this Freudian thing like where, what was your childhood like? But honestly, it really is, because our subconscious is wide open up until the age of 7. So every interaction, everything that is modeled to us, everything that we're hearing and we're seeing on TV and we're told, gets internalized and becomes a part of who we are. And so we learn things when we're younger through these different experiences and through what we see. What happens is that at a young age, let's say, for example, you learn that you see that your parent, was fired from a job. So you learn early that, okay, the world is tough, or your parents tell you money doesn't grow on trees. So you start to internalize those things. And as we get older, we start to express them in different ways. And so we have these beliefs now around, it's hard to make money, for example, going back to the wealth mind and money mindset. So we have these ideas that it's hard to make money, or that everybody in my family is big, so I'm going to be big. And how does that affect us? It affects us in a way that, on a subconscious level, it means that either we're self-sabotaging unknowingly, or we don't even believe that in our heart of hearts, we don't really believe that whatever we're trying to set out is possible for us, right? So that's with a lot of my patients who come to me saying these beliefs that everybody in my family is this size or everybody eats this way, that's a limiting belief. And so one of the main things that I work with my patients is to help them to release these limiting beliefs, because once you do, the sky is just the beginning. It's not even the limit, right? You really do truly start to see yourself in the way that you imagine yourself to be. And you really do start to believe that your goals are achievable.
Yeah. So until you're 7,
your subconscious is wide open. So everything that happens to you, as I said, because I just told you in hypnosis, your subconscious is open, but we're constantly absorbing. So when I do a lot of this release work, I'm going back to childhood. I'm asking you to, through your subconscious, find the root event that led to you believing whatever your belief is, that whatever it is that's holding you back, because it is very much rooted in that earlier stages of our lives.
Yeah, I've always known that you have to be careful what you say, like around kids and stuff, but if they've figured this out through scientific research, I'm assuming that something at the age of 7 develops, or you can still, get in there, but anytime before that, you're just soaking it all in, and anything that you tell them is going to stick for a long time.
Exactly.
The other thing that you said that I think is very important, and maybe you didn't say this directly, but I think what you meant was people often don't even start because maybe they don't believe they can finish.
Exactly.
Why does that happen, and how do we overcome it?
Again, back to what I was saying earlier, it happens because of things that you've believed about yourself. Experiences are a cruel teacher sometimes. And so we believe things about ourselves to protect. So this isn't to say that our subconscious is sabotaging us, actually, just to be clear. Our subconscious forms these beliefs actually to protect us. So it's
a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Makes a big difference in your interpretation of what's going on.
Exactly. And so it's trying to shield you from future hurt. So if it tells you, hey, when you go out on a limb, it doesn't work out for you, so maybe stay in your safe zone, right? Your subconscious is trying to protect you from future hurt, from future potential failures. But if you instead see these failures as like learning, right, experience, ways for you to find out about yourself and the world around you, then you're going to move differently than if you were to really think that these were opportunities for you to get hurt. And so what I love about this NLP coaching is that we are able to address all of these things, right? We're able to get to the crux, to understand a little bit about what you believe about yourself and the world around you. And then how do we change that so it's your subconscious can better serve you now, right? Maybe back then, yes, it was a great idea to like stay in your safe zone. At the time, that was the lesson you needed to learn. But there are other lessons that you probably didn't pick up at the time that we can go back. And so one of the techniques we use in NLP is time therapy, or neural energetic encoding. And so what that is a fancy way of saying, let's go back to what your subconscious believes is the root event, and let's get the other learnings that actually will help you moving forward. What are the things that you need to take from this event that will serve you now? So oftentimes, and this is one of my favorite and most powerful techniques, oftentimes people will learn things about themselves like I'm strong, I'm resilient, I'm capable. And so now, instead of believing that you need to stay small to stay safe, they're believing all of these amazing, empowering things about themselves. So imagine how somebody would move differently believing those things about themselves, right? And so absolutely, this is a great way for people to now, from an place of empowerment, behave differently and really, truly, in their heart of hearts, believe that they can achieve their goals.
Yeah. So I'm going to get a little selfish here. I'm like imagining myself like as speaking to a client, someone that's really struggling. And I know for a fact that a lot of people, they're sitting, they want to do this thing, but deep, deep down in there, they're afraid to start because they're worried either. I feel like it's two things. Like, what if I can't do it? Right. And then the other one is, what if I do and I still feel this way?
Yeah.
I think some people worry about that too. But now I'm going to interject some of these things, try to get back to the root cause of why you feel that way. And then maybe we can get some type of breakthrough, right?
Exactly. And the other thing that I think is really powerful and I think that would be really helpful is getting people to imagine what their life could look like when they achieve their goal. A lot of people are so busy focused on what their life would look like if they failed that they don't really get clear on what it would look like if they succeeded.
Yeah. Why are we, I've heard of this before. People are more worried about, they're more scared of something than they are of like I don't know how to say this.
They're like more scared of the failure than like more excited than the like winning. Basically,
that's right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Why is that? Is it just a safety thing?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it really just goes back to your subconscious trying to protect you. Okay. And so it's really just trying to protect you from what this perceived failure could do for you, right? Oh, you're going to be embarrassed, or you're going to be this, you're going to be that. But instead, again, if we're focusing, and this can take, practice, it's just like muscle, just like, building muscle, it's going to take practice, but getting people to really think about, but what if you what if you get to this weight goal? What if you're able to, like, let's take a minute to like close your eyes. I'll literally tell my patients to close their eyes, especially when it comes to goal setting. People are, I don't know if you've experienced this, but people are not clear about their goals. They'll say, I want to lose weight. Great, that's not a goal. Like, how much, in what time frame?
Right.
Like, you need to get really specific. And the reason that this is really important, and it can serve your subconscious and help them to achieve their goal more easily, is your subconscious needs specificity. It wants to know, what is it you want to achieve to the finest detail. It's kind of like when you go and you test drive a car, and then suddenly that car is like the only car you see in the road. You've told your subconscious, by going out and seeking it and test driving it, this is important to me. So now your subconscious is primed to find all the Honda Civics or whatever car you've tried out, right, on the road, and that's all you're seeing. And so similarly, when you prime your subconscious and you say, I want to be able to walk 30 minutes every single day. I want to be able to, pick up my grandchild without hurting my back. You're very specific. And so your subconscious will help you to get that. It'll find ways for you to be more active. It'll find ways for you to build your strength, et cetera. And so I would encourage you to do this with your clients, is to have them get really specific about their goals, close your eyes, imagine them actually achieving that. That can be a huge motivator, because a lot of people have never even imagined themselves getting there. So 1, motivation. 2, you're priming them so that when they get to that goal, it feels natural. Athletes do this all the time. Mental rehearsal, visualization, right? They visualize like crossing that finish line, and it's been shown to improve their performance. Like, imagine that. Something as simple as closing your eyes and imagining, and then having physiological effects on your body. And so I would just say that could be a really good
I love that.
technique.
That's a great point. I have one more question about goals, and then we're going to change the subject a little bit. What do you think? I haven't done this in a long. This is something I used to do early in my like entrepreneurship journey, I guess. I heard it from someone online, and I did it for a long time. I really liked it, and now that we're talking about goals, I'm kind of thinking about it again. How do you feel about like writing your goals down as if they are current?
Oh, that's the most powerful way to do it.
Really?
That is the most powerful.
What's going on like when you do that?
That is the most powerful way to do it. So I have an emotional eating course, actually, which I probably should have talked about earlier, but
Yeah, plug it.
probably should have said that earlier.
Bring it on in.
But one of the exercises that I have people do is exactly that. So in the goal setting section of the course, I have you write it as if it's present day. You're on the day of that you set your goal to, and writing that out. Again, it's just that concept of making it, the same idea of this mental rehearsal. You're making it real in your mind. And we know that when we make anything that is in our mind, our subconscious doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. When you're watching a horror movie, why would you scream in horror when you're like
It's a
safely,
TV.
you're safely on your couch? But it's like what we see, we imagine and reflect it in our minds, we feel physiologically. And so writing it down as if it's happening will get you into that vibration, into that energy of achieving it. And that's what you need to achieve it, right? So if you need to feel confident now. Don't feel confident when you've, also feel confident when you've achieved the goal, but feel it now in the present moment. And that's what's going to propel you to achieve that goal. So that's why it's so powerful to write it in the present.
Yeah, I should start doing that again.
Yeah.
I used to be like super hardcore about that. I would not leave my house for probably a couple years.
That's amazing.
When I first started, like, my entrepreneurship journey, right? Yeah, I would not. That was every day.
That's so cool.
Every day.
And where did you learn that?
There's a guy, his name's Grant Cardone. He's like a real estate guy. Are you familiar?
Okay. No.
Okay, he's a real estate marketing guy online, and he talked. I used to be really into like apartment investing, real estate stuff, and he talked about that, and I tried it. And I was like, this is great,
That's amazing. Yeah, that concept and affirmations and really like embodying that person again, because what needs to happen in order to achieve your goals and sustainably is to have this identity shift. So it's not just about changing behavior, it's about changing identities. And when you really truly believe that you are this person everything else comes naturally,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
It's not, again, going back to, you don't have to force it. It becomes easy and effortless.
Yeah, like
effortless.
moving forward towards those goals that you feel like you're already in.
Exactly.
It's like the game plans put themselves together. So instead of sitting down and drawing out your game plan, the game plan just happens because you drew out your goals.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's like getting into character. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
really good.
That's
All
a good
right, well, I'm going to
concept.
change a little bit, something that everyone's curious about. How do you feel as a weight loss professional, right? How do you feel, I guess 2 questions, about weight loss drugs in general,
Okay.
and then also the person that's like, NLP, not for me. Give me the stuff. Right? Those are my 2. Like,
Gotcha.
how do you feel in general,
Yeah.
and how do you feel about this other person?
Okay,
you know?
great. So medications are great. So I was just talking to somebody earlier because she was like, "Do you prescribe medicines?" I was like, "Yes." I know I sound very crunchy granola talking about NLP, but I'm at the end of the day, I am still a doctor, and I do believe in the science behind medications as well as I do the science behind NLP. And so what I love about what I do is I get to bring them both together. And so I think that medications have a great place in the right patient to change lives as well, because oftentimes there is a lot of like the biochemistry and metabolism stuff that's going on under the surface that makes it very difficult for people, even if they're doing all of the things like, eating well, exercising well, and sleeping well, to be able to truly cut through like the food noise, for example, or the appetite issues or the cravings issues. And so medications are really great at helping with a lot of those things. So I think that what's happening now with the craze of like kind of going towards one particular kind of medicine, just because, it is super effective. So don't get me wrong, I get it. But I think that we've kind of lost some of the nuances around prescribing. And so I think in the right patient, there can be other medications that can be used.
How are you determining when you say the right patient? Are these some like blood work tests or different things that you're doing, or how do you determine that?
Yeah, so a lot of it is that can be, from a safety perspective, like, what other conditions are going on with this patient. So it's kind of like bigger picture, like looking at the whole picture as opposed to, he or she wants weight loss. Let's just go ahead and prescribe an injectable. Like, is this safe for the patient? And is this the best medication for this patient? So the beauty about these medications, the injectable medications specifically, is that they address so many of the issues that people have. So the cravings, the appetite issues, right? The metabolism issues, the gut issues. So it addresses all of these things. And that's why people, especially, and the danger is when you go to somebody who's not board certified, who's not obesity trained, is that they don't understand how to use the medication in a safe and effective way for the patient. So to give you an example, one thing that we're seeing now, because it's so easily accessible to get compounded medications, for example, which for the record, I don't recommend, is that we have now a lot of skinny fat people, right, is what we're calling them. So they have they're thin, but they still have a high body fat content because they've lost so much muscle. And we know that muscle health is linked to kind of metabolic health. And so we're seeing a lot of other things that are happening now. So people think, well, I'm thin, everything's great. But no, it's not just about being thin, right? There are so many other things that are important about that. Like, are you building your muscle, right? What is your bone health like? And we're seeing that people who just focus on taking the medicine without addressing these other issues do have poor bone health and muscle health. And so they're having other things that are coming up as a result of this. And so it's really important to make sure that you do go to someone who is trained or at the very least, if not certified in obesity medicine.
So for the record, your recommendation is if you're the right person, these weight loss drugs are helpful, but you also need to do some of these other things.
Yes, all of these other things.
Yeah, which is like the strength training,
activity.
the nutrition, and things like that.
Exactly.
All right, well, what do you say? Because maybe you've seen this, maybe you haven't. I'm assuming you have. The person that is just like, give me the drugs.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, they're not usually my patients.
Okay.
So I'm such a believer in this kind of comprehensive approach to weight loss that if they are just looking for medications, I usually will refer them to somebody else.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
It's good to know that because that's what I would like to hear is hopefully they get educated or get what they want, but then when the time is right, they are able to get educated on the things that
Exactly.
that else
So
they
requirement,
need, you know?
yeah, requirement to work with me is that we do a little quick session together to understand goals. And so if I sense or they outright say that they're just looking for a quick fix, then I kind of send, like, thanks, I don't think this is going to work out. Here's some other recommendations. But if they do tell me, and oftentimes, and I've been very blessed that the patients who do sign up to work with me are the very patients that I'm looking for. They're people who have tried everything. They're like, I'm tired, and I'm tired of this cycle, this yo-yo cycle up and down, and I'm ready for something different. And those are the patients that I want to work with.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so those are the patients that really have the most benefit, because when you really work on your mindset, this is so overarching. This is not something that is just for weight loss, right? If you feel that you're capable of doing anything, that's going to affect how you show up in other parts of your life. And so I've never had anyone come back to me like, oh, I really regret that NLP session. I wish we never did that.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing with working out. A lot of times, I always tell people that I completely understand that you don't like working out as much as I do, and you probably never will, but you're here because you need to be. And hopefully I can, invest into you enough to where you understand that, and at least you don't hate it. Yeah. Right. That's like, at least you don't hate it. Right.
Yeah.
But, maybe last question here, like maybe someone is thinking I just want to do the drugs. Right. I think that it's going to help me the most. I'm not sure about this NLP thing. What would you say to that person to maybe try to get them to understand that it is a full spectrum situation? Because I think there's a lot of, I can't think of the word right now. There's a lot of chat out there about this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And everybody knows what we're talking about, right?
It's extremely popular.
Yeah. So like there's a lot of jargon is the word that I was looking for.
Banter.
Banter.
I like all these words.
Banter is a good one.
Conversation.
But jargon is the one I was specifically thinking of. And I define jargon as just like random things that people say that they think is helpful, but is not helping at all.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so maybe they hear a lot of this. Like, how would you try to educate this person? What's the conversation look like?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so what I would say is, and sometimes naturally a conversation leans this way because they'll say, how long do you think I need to be on the medicine, right? So something that I like to say is like, do you want this to be something that you are able to do for the rest of your life, or is this something that you want to do for the short term? And so understanding, and most people do understand that at some point they may have to stop taking the medicine for whatever reason, right? Whether it's accessibility even now these days, right? And so I would say to them, is this something that you want to take indefinitely? Is this something that what actually is your goal? So if they do say it's just weight loss, then I'll try to say, for what reason? So try to get to what is their big why. Oftentimes it's more than just aesthetic, and some people it is just aesthetic, but it's, they want to feel stronger. They want to stop feeling so terrible. And so what I'll say to them is that if you want to find a sustainable way to actually achieve your why, maybe you should think about something that is more sustainable than a drug, right? And what can be more sustainable than the way that you think and the way that you approach life? And so that's what I would say. And so this is what this addresses, is how you think and how you approach your life.
And how long does it take to turn that around?
It's super powerful, I'll say that. And it really depends on what it is you're struggling with. But I have found on average 3 sessions, right? If we're like getting the crux of the issue, we're doing release techniques, we're doing programming in techniques, within 3 sessions, a lot of people's like overwhelming issue with whatever they came in with, they feel a lot better after.
Wow.
Just 3 sessions. It's super powerful.
And you do like one per week, and then they practice it, that whatever techniques y'all discuss maybe for a week, and then implement something else. Is that right?
I usually try to leave a little bit of space, but nothing I do is cookie cutter. It's also nuanced. So it really depends on the client. But on average, I would say about a week or so, because exactly as you said, I want things to trickle in. And when you change things on that level, the subconscious level, it's going to take a little bit of time for it to seep into all areas of your life and for you to notice that change and see what's coming up for you. And so for it to be kind of effective, I try to leave a little bit of gap sometimes, but there are some things that we call breakthrough days where we're kind of like just blocking off a day or so and we're just kind of going at the issue. And that can also be really powerful.
I'm a pretty big fan of that, actually, because, a little bit of sacrifice can go a long ways for the rest of your life. Like one day of sacrifice can lead to years.
Absolutely.
Of, you know,
if you imagine you just change a belief that you have about yourself and what can happen for you, like that's so powerful to me. I've experienced it myself, and I love helping my patients to experience that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, how can someone work with you? You do everything online, right? Everything is online, so it's very accessible, very easy.
Exactly. So I do everything completely online. For the weight loss stuff, it's all within the state of Texas. I can see anybody anywhere. And so my website is albediawellness.com. I hope we'll put it somewhere on the screen or somewhere around it. So if you go to my website, you'll see kind of how to get a free consultation. So I do offer like free consultations, 30 minutes to kind of talk through what you're dealing with and how I can best help you. And then I also have that course that I mentioned about that I love, which it's going to be, I'm transitioning to make it a more interactive live course. Right now it's self-paced, but in the next couple of weeks, I'll be launching it as kind of a live thing. So you can do the videos, and then we also like kind of work together. I think that'll be also really, really powerful for anyone who's struggling with emotional eating, and they know that that's kind of like holding them back from whatever their next step or stage of their life is, or version of themselves. That could be really powerful.
So that course is not, as of recording today, that course is not on your website quite
It is
yet?
on my website.
Oh,
it is. Yes, it is on my website.
It is there.
And actually, if you take advantage of the pricing, anyone who's in it now will be able to take advantage of the group coaching. So when it becomes a more interactive group coaching, the price will most definitely increase.
Okay, sure.
So that'll be in the next couple of weeks. But anyone who's enrolls will be eligible to access that.
Okay, awesome. Well, is there anything we missed or anything that you'd like to say before we kind of wrap up?
No, I think you covered everything. And thank you for that question about like if somebody doesn't think NLP is that effective. And so I think that was a really good question, because people tend to not really understand what it is I'm talking about when I say mindset. And this is exactly it. It's just your relationship with yourself and those around you, right? And so what more important relationship is there to invest in than the one with yourself? And so that's what we address with NLP.
Yeah, there's, people are, I don't want to use the word closed-minded, but they're often closed-minded, So it's like, it's very important to open people's mind to these techniques that are a little bit different than what they're, used to. And,
Exactly.
And a lot of times, I said it earlier, I call it the hippie stuff, but it works. It matters. And like, as an example, one of them that I don't really do this anymore, but I used to, when I first lost weight, something that I would do is every time I ate, I would put my food in front of me and I would take 30 seconds and I would just ask myself, what am I eating? What is it doing for my body? And is it a good thing?
I mean,
right?
Are you an NLP coach? I mean, that's exactly, like it's these mindful things, it's small things that so it doesn't have to be hippie stuff, right? It doesn't have to be hypnosis, but it's just these things where we're like questioning and we're asking and we're reflecting and we're improving, right? It's always like, if it works for you, great. If you're happy, I'm happy.
Right.
But majority of us, there are so many things about ourselves that we wish could be better, but we're not doing anything about it, right? And so this is a great way to, with minimal effort, it's just about self-reflection. I'm not asking you to show up at the gym every day, which would be great if you did. But like with NLP, I'm literally just asking you to show up and be open. That's it.
Yeah, be open-minded and try this thing.
Yeah. I've had so many patients who have I'll be honest with you. I thought when you were explaining it to me, I thought it was stupid, but it works. I've had so many people say like that. I thought this was not going to work. So many skeptics that have converted.
Yes. Yeah. Sean, do you have any questions? Last minute question?
I actually have 2 questions.
Okay.
I have one for both of y'all, actually. So as we're talking about visualization tools to kind of see that person that we want to be, how closely did both of y'all's visualization line up to where y'all are now?
Oh. That's a good one. My visualization, the version of me that I am now, is way beyond what I expected. I'll be honest with you.
Awesome.
As a physician, we have blinders on, and we're just kind of like, I'm going to work 40-hour weeks, and this is all I'm going to do. And so to be where I am now, where I'm like, I have my own business and I'm doing it, I'm learning all of these things. I never believed that I would be here, to be completely honest. Like, this was a limiting belief that I had about myself that I was able to overcome. And so it's a work in progress. It's never, it's a journey and it's never a destination. And so I'm just like, okay, what's, 3.0 Alia look like? And always working on like that next level, I already know and can feel that it's happening. Like just even being here a few months ago, I was like, I would love to be on a podcast. here we are.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And
What about you, Phil?
I would say that the specific things that when I was like in this phase, some of them I actually have a lot of my old journals. They're in a stack in the closet.
Nice.
I have them, there's like maybe 7 or 8 of them, so I have to go back and look at exactly, but a lot of them, mine were like definitely more like financial related for me. Like when I went through this phase of my life, I look back at a lot of the things that I did when I lost weight for my eating habits, like what I just explained to you. I didn't really know at that time how powerful that was. But now looking back, like, oh, this is an NLP type of technique.
Absolutely.
I didn't know at that time, But when I got to this point in my life with the writing thing, they're definitely more like financial business things. So I'm not there, but I do see myself becoming that person that can do those things that were written down.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think just to touch on that real quick is I think a lot of us are doing the things that NLP just has the science backing to show why it's so helpful, right? So like you said, you had no idea that was going to be helpful, but you found it to be helpful. And so I think that back to like people who have some resistances against some of the things that I just said, a lot of us are doing it anyway, right?
Yes.
Like we just put a label on it and just make it more of a more structured. That's it.
Yeah, when you understand what it is, the structure to it makes more sense.
Exactly.
And it's more doable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, so my second question was, when it comes to losing weight with drugs, semaglutides, whatever you want to call it. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I do find it to be one of the most interesting things to me that people will do this instead. Because I feel like fitness and being active and everything is at the peak of popularity right now. There's gyms everywhere. There's people going to the gym all the time. Marketing for, we're talking about commercials earlier. Gyms, fitness and all that is used in marketing tools so many times to emotionally sway people to do certain things. And so I think that, this is almost the opposite of that. Like, okay, well, come and do this and, lose a bunch of weight. So I don't know a lot about it, but I have heard that it produces, GLP-1, like the hunger hormone. Do you have to keep taking the drug after you lose the weight, or is it just like, okay, I lost 50 pounds, cool,
Yeah.
like you can have it back, I'm done with it?
Good question. So GLP-1 is so it's not a hunger hormone. It's actually so what these medications are, they're receptor agonists. So they fancy way of saying that they help to do something that's naturally produced in your body, to do it a little bit better. Okay. And so what are those things? It has effect on multiple parts of the body, but to kind of simplify it, it has effects in your brain and has effects on your gut. And so on your level of your brain, and then other parts too, but again, to simplify it. So on the level of your brain, it helps to reduce these cravings and helps with appetite suppression. On the level of the gut, what it does, it helps to slow down that natural movement of food as it goes through your digestive system. So what that does is on a physical level, you then feel more full because the food has taken longer to digest. And that feeling when you're just like, oh, I feel like your stomach is distended and you just feel like you just ate. So that feeling kind of lasts a little bit longer because of this medication. So, and then there's, again, other things that it does on the level of your fat cells, et cetera. Now, these are how that medication works. Mm-hmm. Just like with any medicine, while you're taking it, its effects are present. And so it's not changing anything structurally forever. Mm-hmm. So yes, when you stop taking the medicine, the effects are gone. Okay. And so it's very common for people to lose the weight and then gain it right back, just like a diet, right? And so that's why I tell people, like, this is not sustainable. For people who want that quick fix, they will get that quick fix, but they'll get that quick regain as well, especially if they've made no effort to make changes to their lifestyle, their mindset, their activity level, et cetera. And so that's why it's so important to really reinforce all of the things that we're saying within the fitness level, like you said, like fitness realm, so eating and stress management, et cetera. Because while the medicines can alleviate some of the pressures of those things, because you'll start to see results and you start to feel really good, but again, you want to go back to basics and make sure those basics are there. And for some people, actually quite a good number of people, if those basics are there and they come off of the medicine, they're often able to maintain it. Now, there are the population where there's like a big genetic component and that, again, this isn't changing anything permanently with the medication. So there may be some weight regain. And for those patients, they may have to be on a low dose of that medicine indefinitely, just like anyone who has high blood pressure. And we know people who, even though they, may eat clean and they're avoiding all the things that we tell them to avoid for high blood pressure, they still need a high blood pressure medicine for the rest of their lives. And just as we wouldn't ask them, like, when are you going to come off your blood pressure medicine? I don't expect people to ask, when are you going to come off of your weight loss medicine? Because everybody's going to be a little bit different.
Understand.
Something that I'll say, and tell me if I'm wrong in saying this, but when it comes to these drugs, there's nothing magical happening other than it is helping you eat less and get less calories. Is that accurate or?
Yes and no. Because there's more than that, right? There has never been anything to the level that we've seen here with this medication that can. So what I'm saying is that with these medications, we're seeing up to 15-20% body weight loss. Okay. We have never seen that before. we're talking like surgery, gastric surgery levels, right? And so that's why these medications are so like sensationalized, is the extent of how they can really help with weight loss. So it's not magic, but it does help with a lot of the things that we have up until now not been able to address. And a big thing that I've noticed, especially with my patients, that they'll say to me is food noise. They are not thinking about food the whole day.
I've heard this
so
also.
they're able to make better choices. So the difference between somebody who can easily lose weight, one of the differences, and people who struggle with weight loss is that, thankfully, I struggled a little bit in college, but it was just, a little bit. It wasn't anything that was excessive. But I'm not always thinking about food. My patients who struggle with obesity are always thinking about food. It's the first thing they think about. It's the last thing they think about when they go to sleep. They're thinking about it throughout the day. When they start taking these medications, they're like, I can finally focus on other things. It's easier for me to make the right choice, healthier choices, things like that. And so it's magical in that way because we, up until now, haven't found anything that can really suppress that to the level that these medications are able to do.
Something that's on my mind now that you explain it in that way. As an example, if I know, like, say today's Friday, right? But pretend today was Tuesday, and I knew that we were going to a really nice restaurant, my favorite place ever. We only go once a year, and we're going there on Saturday.
It's on your mind the whole
time. Imagine that feeling all the time, maybe, is how...
Exactly.
Yeah, I've never heard that term food noise. That's such an interesting thought. It almost reminds me, I haven't had any experience with this personally, but I would imagine like drug use, like of the stimulant type. You probably think, I've heard some studies that they can show these people that suffer with this a very small image of what their drug of choice, and then it's just like they're now they're thinking of it. It's stuck in their head, and that's so interesting.
And it's interesting too that you bring up like the issue or the idea of addiction, because there are some studies that show that these medications can help with addiction. So people who have who struggle with alcoholism or alcohol addiction, when they're on these medications, they actually realize that they want alcohol less. So there's some implications in it helping with that. So I do believe as more science comes out that there is this element of, and we do know that food can be addictive for so many people. And so there's like this kind of interplay there too that this medication is helping with. So that all of this to say, this is why I say that there is a place for these medications, absolutely, but there still needs to be that base of like a healthier lifestyle with physical activity, nutrition, stress management. That still needs to happen regardless of medications or not.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Really appreciate your time.
Of course.
We went a little overtime. Sorry about that. We should
keep it
under control.
This happens. We're good. It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, this is really great stuff. So anything else you want to mention before we wrap up? Otherwise...
No. I just, anyone who's considering it, definitely give it a try. And then as far as the NLP, the counseling or the coaching aspect, that I see people internationally and not just in Texas. So anybody who's even considering like trying this out, I have patients who this like takes the place of years of therapy. Not to say that I'm not a proponent of therapy. It can happen alongside it, but in NLP, we're focused on action that drives the future as opposed to looking at the past and kind of rehashing things. So
awesome. That's a great way to think about how to use them together.
Exactly.
Even one's focused on the past, one's focused on the future.
Exactly.
Love that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep. All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
Peace.